And welcome back to the Wolverine Live. I'm John Borton here with Tom Crawford. And Tom, great to have you with us tonight. It's always fun to talk Michigan athletics. We're going to talk a lot of Michigan football and basketball tonight. But you all know Tom, East Lansing resident, Michigan grad, and the guy that brings the fire here. He gets a little worked up, and we love it. Tom, welcome back.
Well, it's great to be here. Well, there's something way more important than anything to do with Michigan athletics. It's the fact that John Borton is now a grandpa. So I want to say congratulations to you. Why don't you tell our listeners what's coming down in the Borton family?
Well, I appreciate that. My son had a beautiful little girl here. Actually, his wife did. It was a joint project.
Yes.
Just a few days ago, but she is healthy and just a delight, and came out singing the victors. So
That's job one, making sure that maize and blue blood flows through that little one.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But it's great to be here with you. Great to be talking Michigan athletics tonight, and we've got some interesting topics. We're going to start with this one. Joel Klatt, as you know, of Fox, that covers a lot of Michigan's games. He's come out with a top 10, I believe it is, and Michigan number 2 nationally on Mr. Klatts' list. And he's a guy that sees a lot of the Wolverines. Like I mentioned, your initial reaction to Michigan being number 2 on his list.
Well, it doesn't surprise me at all. In fact, Joel Klatt has always been kind of bullish, giving Michigan the benefit of the doubt in preseason rankings, even back in the Brady Hoke era. I mean, I remember at Big Ten, he was always at Big Ten media days. He really does his research, not just the Big Ten, but all leagues. And he's pretty smart guy. I've always appreciated his intel. And I think, what it's kind of a no-brainer that Michigan be number 2. I mean, considering for all the reasons we've cited the last few weeks about how much depth on both sides of the ball, and you have your starting quarterback. Now, Georgia does not have their starting quarterback back, nor does a lot of teams in the hunt. Obviously, Ohio State and Bama has to break in a new one, and Penn State has a freshman quarterback freshman last year who saw some actions, got some experience, and then USC with Caleb Williams. So some do, some don't, but it didn't surprise me, and I like number 2 versus number 1, quite honestly, John. A little less pressure, a little hanging in the weeds a little bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very reasonable. You've got Georgia, who has been on the top of the heap, and, they ought to be up there. I think Michigan at 2 is a great spot. And I think that it's well-deserved for what they've done. And yes, there have been disappointments in these playoff games, but one of them was to the national champion in Georgia, and the other was they got in a shootout and they didn't quite pull it out. So, and the other thing was about that is that Ohio State, number 3 on Klatts' list, hung with Georgia for a long while in that national championship game, giving you the thought that, well, Michigan this year probably could have done the same thing because why? Well, obviously the Wolverines went into Columbus and knocked off the Buckeyes. I understand the transitive property, and you can't go by that always, but it's still Michigan was a very competitive team last year, and I think they would have had a shot to hang with Georgia. So I like number 2 for Michigan. What also is attention grabbing there, however, is that 1, 3, and 5 are all Big Ten teams. So it's not like Michigan's alone in the high estimation of one Mr. Klatt. You've got the Buckeyes, who at number 3, who are coming up to Ann Arbor this year. And then you've got, of course, Penn State, who is getting a lot of hype and a lot of regard this year, which, you've got Penn State is that team that Michigan has to visit this year. Not only, not comfortably when all the leaves are changing around State College and when it's beautiful, but into November when it can get a little bit windy and nippy out there, we're going to see what's going on. You know that Penn State is going to be gearing up. They're going for the stripe out where you have white and blue alternating in the stands. And I think that's going to be a game to circle almost as much as Ohio State. So talk about these big three of the Big Ten and the Big Ten East, of course, which, just seems to lie in wait for each other, and then gets a West team almost as a break in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, yeah. And Penn State doesn't surprise me. They lost, 2 games last year, Michigan and Ohio State. And, they won the Rose Bowl. They won their bowl game. When you win a New Year's Six game, you get a lot of cred that rolls into the next year. And that was a good situation for a good momentum into the next year. And you got the two incredible, really solid running backs that Penn State has coming back, and then obviously in the quarterback. I mean, this Nick Singleton is running back, and then as Katon Allen, the other guy. I think they were both freshmen last year, both back to enter their sophomore seasons. Wow, you have that, and then you have and Drew Aller, the quarterback. He was a 5-star, and he got in at the back end of the year, and so you could really compare, not as much experience as J.J. McCarthy has, but that backfield with the two running backs and the quarterback, that's got the potency that Michigan has. And so I think that has a lot of reason that they're, cited really highly, as well as also returning players on both sides of the ball. Now, Penn State has to play at Ohio State, but they get to host Michigan. And when I look at that schedule, which I look at on occasion, right? November 11th. Wow. We know it's not going to be a night game, right? Because Ohio State is hosting Michigan State that night on NBC. So I'm thinking, I'm thinking it's going to be one, that Fox big game, that big noon kickoff thing that they've been promoting over the last couple of years. I think and I like that 12 o'clock slot, but I'll tell you what, this Penn State team is going to be a tough out there. They're kind of be hurting these last 2 games. Michigan has beat them. They beat them obviously 2 years ago in that late touchdown, and then last year. So look out. That's going to be a Donnybrook, if you will.
There's no doubt about it. And you anticipated my next question, which was be scheduled there, and that November 11th Saturday when Michigan is at Penn State. You already gave the particulars about Ohio State and Michigan State being the night game. And if you're Michigan, you hope that this is going to be Fox's big noon game. And the reason why, it is easier to win in Happy Valley in the middle of the day than it is when folks are all juiced up at night, because you look at the last 4 games out in Penn State. Yeah. Michigan has won the 2-day games and lost the 2 night games.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. What's the 3:30? What if it's a CBS now? People don't realize, Big Ten's going CBS. They're taking over the SEC. There's a swap there. So a 3:30 game, you kind of get a little hybrid. In November, it's going to be dark on the back end.
Oh, no doubt. It'll be night. Yeah. It'll be before you finish that thing, because it'll be getting dark earlier. It'll be cold. The folks will do whatever they need to do to stay warm. And all of us, that Michigan will play them as they come, no question. But if that's Fox Big Ten big noon game, I'm telling you, Michigan's chances go up in that one. That's something that a lot of Michigan fans will pay attention to.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't know why that is. I mean, this, maybe you talked about the inebriation of the fans and how loud it is. I've never been to a Michigan Penn State game at night. You have. I've been to day games, and so you tell me, how much more significant is the noise level at night, John Borton, than it is in the daytime?
I think part of it's the noise level. I think it definitely is ramped up. There is just a different feeling when you're in that night environment. Tom, I know you felt it with, say, Notre Dame, Michigan at home,
Yeah.
and just how ramped up everybody gets. And it's the same, certainly, in Happy Valley. I think it juices up the players themselves. They've talked about it. The home players, with that night atmosphere, with that crowd going. I get it that under Jim Harbaugh in recent years, Michigan has embraced those situations. I mean, they did jump around in Wisconsin, but there is still a different feeling when you are the home team and it is night and it's that special environment. So I think, again, Michigan better off if it's the big noon game. As you mentioned, you get a half and half if it's a 3:30 game, and they have dodged the bullet already on the night game out there. But let's take a look at some of our other football topics. I was surprised as I was reading about a conversation that took place between one James Joseph Harbaugh and a really good running back that he's going to have in the backfield this year. That would be Blake Corum.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter was, obviously, Corum had a significant injury that kept him out of the Ohio State game for the most part. He got in a couple snaps and then, was able to come back for the playoffs. But just the fact that he was actually advised by his head coach to not come back to Michigan. What he said was this: Coach Harbaugh, he said, said to get the surgery, and he told me to go to the league. I said, Coach, what would you do? And he said, if I were you, I'd go to the league. But this is before I got the surgery. This was before I even thought about coming back, because I was going to the league. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But then in the back of my head, I was thinking, you're not going to be able to do that combine. You're not going to be able to show the scouts what you can do, on and on. And, but it strikes me in two different ways. First of all, if just flat out Michigan fan, they're saying, Coach, what are you doing? You advise the young man to stay here. But Jim Harbaugh is not put together like that. He said it would be better for you, for your own self-interest, to head to the NFL. And I think that can really, when guys that play in this program read that, when recruits read that, I think that can have an effect. I think that can say to them, here's a guy that is really looking out for my interest above all else, even over what might be advantageous to his program at this point.
Yeah, I could tell where you're going with this, and I agree totally with you, John. I mean, you want to. I mean, this is what makes Jim Harbaugh a player's coach, because he's focused on what's best for the player. You know what I mean? And I think I think you win. It's better for your program in the long run if that's your centerpiece of philosophy, as far as when it comes down to these decisions. I mean, Blake Corum rushed for over 400 or 1,400 yards. I think 1,457 and 18 touchdowns. Okay, that's NFL caliber stuff. The problem is, when you're injured, you have a lot of ambiguity around you, right? How are you coming out of surgery and you can't you can't make the combine, so you can't get your credibility, you can't get the comfort zone by these NFL teams that he's back to what he was. And so I think that's why he came back. I think it's a great decision he's coming back. I'm certainly glad he's going to come back. And you really don't know how he's going to come off that surgery. We really don't know. We'll see what happens in the fall. But I agree with you. I think what Jim Harbaugh did is, I mean, that's typical Jim Harbaugh. I think Jim Harbaugh thinks about his players more than anything else, and that's the way it should be. And so it did not surprise me at all when I saw the headline in that article on the Wolverine.com that he encouraged him to go. And I think this is going to work out. The way it's working out is going to be terrific for both Michigan. I think it's good for Blake. Get that, he can get his credit, he can have a great season. Let's envision that. And he could win a national championship too.
And two things about Blake Corum himself. If there's anybody who will do everything in his power to get back and be everything that he was, it is
Mhm.
Blake Corum. This is a
Yeah.
guy that, excuse me, has actually been uh, had to be told to stand down at times by the weight room people because
Yeah.
to do so much. And you look at that and he's going to work with. He has been working with the trainers and with the doctors and with Ben Herbert, the
Yeah.
strength and conditioning man, to do everything possible to regain everything that he lost or was set aside for a while after he tweaked that knee. And the other thing about it is Blake Corum is, I talk about Jim Harbaugh scoring some points with players and future players in the way he conducts himself in this area. Uh, Look at Blake Corum and how beloved he's going to be in the
Oh,
big house this fall. He said in that same article, the NFL's not going anywhere. So what's more, one more year? I'm getting all the pros, my degree, my chance to win a national championship, the chance of leaving a true legacy, chance of being a hero. I'm in the community here big time. So I get one more year with the community, charities, and giving back. I mean,
yeah.
he,
Yeah.
he's the full package, and he has been since he got here.
Yeah, he's the ultimate leader, John, and I love how his candor about the fact, he's the first person in his family to attend college. Okay, so he's really close to his degree. He got his degree. Okay, and he admitted right up front, if I had gone out early in the NFL, he still had some classwork to do. He finished that up. He just graduated a couple weeks ago. He got his college degree from the University of Michigan. That's pretty awesome. And admitted he wouldn't have got finished up. And who knows when you're going to come back to get it, right? I mean, Jimmy King just walked to get his degree, because his daughter, the basketball player I'm talking, not switching over to basketball time, but just it came to mind. He finally got his degree from the University of Michigan, 30 years later, but he got it. So that's all that's important. But I think it's very cool that Blake did that. And then remember the video in the weight room, the Ben Herbert video, whoever took that thing, when Blake has got all his peeps around him, encouraging him to see how many how many reps he can get at 225. I think he got 30, if not, or 29 to 30, and just the whole excitement that weight room had going on. That is a true leader on this team, and that's as important as all those yards he gets, as the leadership he brings. So it's all good for Blake Corum coming back in the fall.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. And he will get an exceptional reception at the big house when the actual season rolls around because people know what he means to this team. They know what he means to the community. They know what he means to Michigan's chances for getting it done again against Ohio State and in the bowl game or or the playoffs. That's really the goal right now. You talk to every one of these guys. Let's switch over from talking running backs to talking quarterbacks for a minute, because we know who is going to be QB1, but who is QB2 in the mind of Tom Crawford? You've got a guy like Davis Warren, who was number 2 for the most part last year, and he's come a long way since illness in high school really reduced his chances or reduced his standing on the big stage. He wasn't recruited as highly as he might have been. And then all of a sudden you get a guy like Alex Orji in here, who is what they call an athletic freak, and certainly a very big guy that could be a mobile quarterback, could give you the short yardage and down by the goal line efforts that could put you over the top. And then you get Indiana transfer Jack Tuttle, who certainly has a number of years under his belt and comes in with the kind of experience and savvy that could be quickly plugged into Michigan's offense. What do you think about these guys, and who do you think emerges as number 2 for Michigan?
When I read a lot of analysts talk about projecting, like Joe Klatt, how can Michigan be number 1? I mean, they look at quarterback depth as a weakness of Michigan. I think it's a strength, quite honestly. When you deal with the 3 names that you mentioned, it's they're all good in my mind. I do think, I know the spring game was not a good indication he turned the ball over, but I think Jack Tuttle to be the guy that doesn't turn the ball over, and that's what you want. You want in your backup if you can get a Cade McNamara, if God forbid this happens, where someone will have to steer the ship down the stretch if JJ gets hurt, but the fact just manage, I know it's an over cliche, but manage the team, and move the chains. And Jack Tuttle is that guy with his experience that he's had at Indiana. I thought he showed a lot of command in the spring game, even though there were some mistakes. But and Davis Warren has looked good when he's had time. I know it's mop up time, and it's a heck of a story overcoming that the illness and everything. But Alex Orji is yeah, this is going back. It's not going way back. But you remember Antonio Bass out of Jackson?
You bet.
You remember him at Michigan? He was kind of a gadget quarterback. He came in and they were moving a wide receiver, but he was kind of a situational quarterback, and he had just horrific knee injury that we know. But Alex Orji is that guy. Different kind of athleticism, but just freak like you mentioned. And there probably could be some situational opportunities for him, like in the red zone or in other situations where they could use that skill set, because he looks like a running back out there, but he's got a heck of an arm. So I think quarterback is a position of strength beyond JJ McCarthy.
Yeah, well, I do too. And when you mentioned Jack Tuttle as Tom Crawford's number 2 in the maize and blue, I would say that you not only agree with my esteemed colleague, one Mr. Chris Ballas, but you also agree with a few folks behind the scenes around spring ball for Michigan. But I am going to throw this in. I am not ruling out that number 2 could be Davis Warren, because this guy shows a lot of stuff, a lot of moxie, and I think he is a great story, which could become greater given the right set of circumstances, because I really think that there's a lot to this kid, and I'm anxious to see how this plays out, how Jim Harbaugh operates with his various quarterbacks. And you mentioned Alex Orji will have a role. There's no question about that, because he's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got the running ability, he's got those things that could, in certain situations at this point, I'm not saying he's not going to be an all-around quarterback at some point, but I really think in this situation where you have an established number 1 and some guys that have played number 2 and possibly number 3, that Alex Orji still could have a significant role on this team. So that's a good assessment of the quarterbacks. We'll see how that plays out, and I appreciate your thoughts on that. Now, however, we need to take a moment, a brief timeout from our conversation with Tom Crawford on the Wolverine Live, to give a shout out to the sponsor of our Tuesday night recruiting show and a longtime partner of the Wolverine in Lewis Jewelers. Simple question, guys. Is your daughter's engagement ring bigger than that of your wife? If the answer is yes, great news. Lewis Jewelers can help. It's stress-free and easy working with one of their non-commissioned, trusted expert advisors, finding that perfect diamond. So stop by today, guys, and fix the family issue. Lewis Jewelers, your diamond store, and so much more since 1921. Visit them at their new location, 300 South Maple Road, Ann Arbor, or online at lewisjewelers.com. That's LEWISJEWELERS.com. That's Lewis Jewelers, where Ann Arbor gets engaged. And now we're back to our conversation with Tom Crawford. We've been talking Michigan football, and I like the conversation that we are about to have, because it's talking about Michigan's position groups and how one of the experts from On3, where the Wolverine finds its home. You want to watch all our information gathering, our analysis, our columns, our podcasts, our Wolverine Live, go to the Wolverine.com, or the Wolverine rather, on the On3 network. But this assessment is eye-catching because they're talking about nationally position groups. Offensive line for the Wolverines ranked number 2 in the nation. Defensive line and / edge ranked number 2 in the nation. You start with those two that are right up there in line with Michigan's overall ranking by Mr. Klatts, and you see that there is a lot of respect. Jim Harbaugh has built this football team and this football program around strength on both lines, and that is being recognized in a big way.
Yeah, hey, it's the game. It's up front. It's in the trenches, and you know when we talk about all the personnel coming back and the transfers that are that are also part of that. Darius Henderson, some other people. It's the depth. It's like you can foreshadow. Well, God forbid someone gets hurt, someone can plug that guy in. Then when the defensive line, you got that rotation ability. I think that's why they're both number 2 is depth as opposed to just the starting 5 which really probably is still being battled out, as far as who's going to be in those slots, but they're all good. Once again, as I mentioned, they're recognizable names in that second tier, even in the third tier. The three's has a lot of playing time. So that did not surprise me at all. In fact, when you look at Michigan, when we were talking about that competition at quarterback, I think besides the competition at quarterback and maybe that other corner opposite Will Johnson, I mean, what are all the other other uncertainties that we're worried about? Not a lot, right? I mean, because everybody's coming back and it's pretty solid. And so I'm not saying it's the call, everybody's just chill right now. And Michigan's gonna have a great year, but there's not a lot of worry factors out there.
Understood. And you say you weren't so surprised about the offensive line and defensive line. I think a lot of people would agree with you there. But how about the number 4 group in the nation, Michigan's linebackers? That'll get your attention. You can see on the screen there, along with cornerbacks. But the linebackers, you think about that. You can see some of what was said, and they're talking about with Michael Barrett, Mr. Sixth Man, 6-year man, Junior Colson, Ernest Hausman, who guy from Nebraska told me one of their insiders was their best freshman last year and ended up being on the field as a linebacker. They're talking about potential for 3 all big linebackers with all Big Ten potential. That was the assessment from On3.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about Michael Barrett. Remember, was it the Rutgers game? He flipped that game around. I mean, Michigan was struggling early on. He had, he had the pick 6 or he had an amazing game. And Junior Colson, I mean, these guys have played a lot of football. And then Ernest Hausman, I mean, we talked about that a number of times. I know can he transfer that ability over to Michigan from another program? You always that uncertainty and the chemistry involved, but man, that's a position of strength. And I think it's maybe not going to be their strongest position, but it's going to be much more certain than last year when there was some skepticism about that situation and the lack of depth. And, we had injury, Hill Green. And so now he's off, he's on to other things. And so it's going to be a different look, but I'm excited about it. John.
Number 4 for the cornerback surprises me a little bit. You're in terrific shape with Will Johnson, but that other side has got some stars for now. It's got some talented competition for sure, but that one strikes me as maybe a little bit high.
Oh, you think? Yeah, I same reaction here. I mean, that's the position that I'm concerned with. It's a lot of potential, but it's such an important position. Besides coverage and run support. And so that one took me back. And but you got Charles Woodson in the making over there, 2.0 on the other side, wearing number 2, by the way, and Will Johnson. So he's going to be one of those guys that just, can cover one side of the field by himself, what Charles Woodson did back in 1997.
Yep, no question about it. We'll move on. Number 2 in the nation, Michigan's safeties, and uh, I am in agreement there. I think that Michigan safeties are going to be the real heart
Real
of that defensive backfield, even though Will Johnson might be the number 1 star. I think they're very, very good. And Tom Crawford, the Michigan fans' favorite trivia question surrounds one Makari Page. And do you know what that might happen to be?
a trivia question.
A
No,
trivia question. Here it is. Who caught CJ Stroud's final pass in
oh
Columbus?
yes,
And
on
that
the pick.
one Makari Page on a tip pass. And
Forgot about that. Yeah, that was huge. That was big. I mean,
yeah,
I'm not saying it was. Yeah, and then all of a sudden, what, 1 or 2 plays later, Donovan goes the distance again. That was, that took that 15-point lead to a 23-point lead, whatever the numbers played out. That was big. And you know, Rod Moore, I see his name up there. Well, I think you asked me a couple weeks ago about that defensive side of the ball, who is going to be the MVP, and I think I threw Rod Moore's name in there, and I'm doubling down on that. I mean, think about how good he's played at Michigan. This is his 3rd year, and I think he's going to have an All-American year. I think that dude, number 19, dude's a player.
coach on the field too. They
Yeah.
talk about him and his savvy, and he is exactly that. And with all that talent. So, by the way, sit on that trivia question for a few years, and then hit up your favorite diehard Buckeye fan, CJ Stroud, who caught his last pass. that'll be a fun one for him. All right,
Yeah.
before we've got a category that's not rated, and one of these is a surprise to me: quarterbacks, wide receivers, and tight ends. I'm wondering about Michigan's quarterbacks not being among the rated national groups, just on the strength of J.J. McCarthy behind center as the starter alone.
Yeah, and how is tight ends not rated? I mean, Michigan's got some depth there. Yeah, the quarterback for the thing that I talked about, that it surprised me. I'm in contrast with that. I think this depth and probably too close a situation, and probably have maize and blue colored goggles on when I evaluate things too much. But I do think that the quarterback's fine, but the wide receiver thing is still that still is Roman Wilson's going to have a great year. He was tremendous, I thought, last year. He's our best threat, but I still want that Keon Coleman 50 ball receiver that they don't have, and they haven't had. And I want that guy that the Mario Manningham, who can make big plays in various routes, the whole passing tree, big plays, not just fades, but the crossing, kind of a dig route, that kind of the touchdown pass against Penn State in overtime in 2005, the post corner, or the fade in 2007 down at Spartan Stadium, that big catch where he can go high ball everything. Is Darius Clemens going to be the guy? Who's going to be the guy? And I don't know who's going to be that guy. And that's until that guy's there, especially when you contrast it to the Ohio State situation, which is not fair to compare that any team to that. That's NFL caliber. They got that wide receiver thing down to a science on Ohio State. That's wide out. Is Ohio State.
Yep. Now, with all that talent, they need to try and score 30 points against Michigan, which they have not done the past 2 years. A credit to Michigan's defense. And by the way, when you were listing those wide receivers you were talking about, it's always fun to look back at a Spartan heartbreaking performance by one Braylon Edwards back in 2004.
Yes. Yeah.
Stadium.
Yeah. That's another example. And they haven't, Greg McMurtry, Anthony Carr, you can go back. They just haven't had that guy. I mean, they've had good receivers, but they haven't had that guy that like, wow, and makes an emergence in the NFL and that kind of guy. And maybe CJ is going to be, maybe Cornelius Johnson is going to have that breakout year. He's been a good player. He's done some really good things, including the Ohio State game, obviously, but last year in Columbus. But gonna have someone's got to step up beyond our expectations.
Yeah, I agree. And we will see which of these guys rise up. We've talked about the freshmen from last year and how the potential they have for getting in there and doing it. Somebody has to start to rise up now. We're right down to the 2-minute drill here, and we're not going to get much a chance to talk basketball. But I did want to mention one thing that really caught my attention. You had Jalen Llewellyn, who we know lost last season altogether because of a knee injury early. And he went on the Defend the Block podcast recently with our friend Brian Bush, who is the your play-by-play guy from
Right.
and this is some of what Llewellyn said. He says, I think I'm definitely on my way to getting back out there. And understand, Llewellyn, for those that don't know, did get a waiver for another year to
Yes.
participate with Michigan. He says, I started just getting back on the court the past couple of weeks, doing stuff, more and more athletic things and just leg raises and stuff I've been doing the couple past months past surgery. It feels good to be moving more. It's not that fast yet, but I'll get there. Your thoughts on how that might play out, what he might be able to give Michigan this year, and certainly Doug McDaniel has taken that point guard spot that Llewellyn was supposed to man last year, and how might they work together?
I don't know. That's a great that's a great question because I really didn't see them work together last year. And Jalen Llewellyn, um, let's be real, last year he didn't like wow the world out there for the Michigan basketball program before he got hurt. And this is a great kid. I had a nice chat with him at media day of his, this guy's a Princeton graduate. Okay.
Right.
So, he's high cotton in my mind. But the problem, come off this injury, I don't know what he's going to bring to the table. I thought Doug McDaniel had a good thing going in the latter part of the year. I thought he held himself very well last year, but how's that going to play out this year? And then what was it? The kid for what RJ Dennis, the Toledo guy, they bring him in for a visit. Was it last week, John? My memory is a little foggy right now. So
Right.
I mean, are they going to offer him? I mean, this whole basketball thing of 13 scholarships, 13 seats on the plane, if you will. There's 11 of them that are accounted for. There's still 2 to go. Once again, when we have a podcast in about 3 weeks, then we'll be able to talk about this basketball team.
Yeah.
It's still moving parts. I can't really get a handle on what this next year is going to bring.
Yep. Well, we're going to talk about all the movements all the time on the Wolverine Live with Tom Crawford. Appreciate you joining us as always, and great job. I look forward each week to talking Michigan football, basketball, occasionally hockey, depending on which other team is rising up in the top of the NCAA rankings. But I'll tell you what, it's always fun, and it's coming fast. Coming the 1st of September might seem like a long way away, but you're going to snap your fingers and it'll be here, my friend.
Well, yeah, but before we go, I gotta throw one little nugget, about the whole program itself. Michigan has 13 Big Ten championships now. That's tied for last. I'm talking about all sports. That's tied for last year's high water mark. And I think that's, with men's lacrosse. I mean, they've only been around for 10 years. We got to throw a little carrot out to them for what they've accomplished with the freshman
Absolutely.
goaltender. And that, baseball's made the tournament, softball, first time not in the tournament since 1994, but they will bounce back. The transition, obviously, legendary coach. But I just think a shout out to Michigan athletics, John. I know a lot of people, we're all in this Michigan football and basketball focus, but it feels good that Michigan's good in everything. Everything they're good at. And they're in the top 5 for all sports, and that's not even counting the spring sports. And so who knows, they might end up number 1. So just wanted to tip my hat to the whole athletic program. Ward Manuel deserves some credit for that as well.
There's no question about it. Tom Crawford, always there with the hard-hitting commentary and all-around athletic news. Thanks, Tom. We'll do it again next week.
All right, Grandpa. Have a good one. Enjoy your new edition.
You bet.